Hi, Guy Carolyn for Service. I have an Carolyn Talks podcast. Thank you so much for joining us today and for doing this documentary because I think it's very important, especially for the younger generations or for people who aren't familiar with the North American Black comedy scene. Something that really struck me with the series is how it shows the evolution of Black comedy throughout the last 30 years. And you talked, and it touched a bit upon how social media has become such a big influence in comedy. So can you just talk about that from your perspective? Because social media has allowed people like Ryan Ken to become a writer now on Last Week Tonight, and for other women like Leslie Jones to share her comedy through Twitter, like tweets for events and stuff. So talk about your perspective on the evolution of comedy from television to social media.
Well, good question. It's I had to lay the groundwork. I mean, this documentary really started even deeper than that. When I was doing my research just on Black comedy and Black people, period, I took it all the way back to slavery. Slaves used to tell jokes to master to keep from getting their ass whooped. And then if they were funny enough, the slave master would take them to another plantation to perform for another slave owner. So Negroes been on tour for a long time, and we've been, I would have loved to be in them cotton fields back then, with them playing the dozens. Can you imagine, Kunta Kinte coming back with a half a foot and all the jokes he got? I mean, that's what we do. I was just at the Comedy Cellar this weekend, and the comedians was going in on comedian Godfrey for his Ti run in, and they were letting Godfrey have it. But that's what we do. We it's our love, but we gonna let you have it. So I know those slaves back then was going deep into the burlap bags with jokes back then. So I had to. We end up focusing it on a little bit, not as broad, but we had to take it to that, and then the Chitlin circuit and how the Chitlin circuit came about and all that, and then we kind of just settled on, okay, let's talk about the Comedy Act Theater, and because we got to explain why Fat Tuesdays was so important. It was important because the places we had to perform, and what people don't realize, when I first got to LA, and white people would ask me, "You're a comedian?" I'm like, yeah, yeah, yeah. When can I see you at the Comedy Store, the Laugh Factory, Improv? And I couldn't tell them because I wasn't a regular. I didn't have a TV show. I wasn't in movies. And if you're Black back then, you weren't really seeing those stages as much. And I hated how they made me feel. They made me feel like I wasn't a real comic because I wasn't in one of the big clubs on Sunset. And I hated that feeling. I hated Black comedians who were regulars at those big three comedy clubs on Sunset coming down to the hood peacocking, walking around like, yeah, I got a spot at the Comedy Store tonight or the Improv. And I hated that. So I wanted to create a place where a comedian can tell someone, an agent or a manager, hey, come see me at the Comedy Store on Sunset. And I wanted a place where they felt at home, where they don't have to do white jokes. They can do jokes for us because the room is 99% Black. And you don't have to alter your humor. You can be comfortable in your skin, in your Black skin, telling those jokes. So it was very important to show that, but also the future. With this documentary, I always wanted to, preserve the past, honor the present, and inspire the future. In my generation of comedians some of them are always going in on these new comedians, as Bob Sumner calls them, social medians, because they have a different way in. That's just their way in. Don't hate on them. If you're smart, they can teach us how to be the social media comedian, and we can teach them game. We can teach them, the live show. And I applaud what these younger comedians have, and the sketches and skits they do are amazing. And I wish I was that talented to do that or that focused to do that. But in my word to them is just always put the reps in. Get on stage. You have the best of both worlds, because I've seen some of those shows where people pay money to come see the social medians, and they're supposed to do 45 to 50 minutes and they only have like 5. And what that does is it kind of hurts live comedy. If you come into a comedy show for the first time in your life and that's your first experience, and you're expecting somebody to go 45 minutes and after 5-6 minutes they're done, that hurts live stand-up, and we may lose a live customer for life. So I wanted to be able for these new comedians to see, the history of not just Black comedy, but comedy period, and what it takes, and how hard it was for me to get on stage at a white establishment, but even harder for the generations before me, and to respect that stage when you get on stage. And that's what, when I moved to the main room at the Comedy Store, it was so important for me not to fail, because I knew we don't get those opportunities much. So whatever money I got, I put back into making that room. To finish answering another question that was asked earlier, I put that money back into the room to make sure I had a great staff. We would have a prayer before every before we open those doors. We'd have a prayer, and then we'd hash out stuff. Okay, anybody got gripes, anybody got problems, da da da. Then we all pray together as a family. And I wanted a family atmosphere because I told my staff, the bouncers, I told them, look, when they come to this comedy club, when they come to Fat Tuesdays, don't treat them how you all treat the customers at other clubs, at dance clubs in LA, that make you feel like it's a privilege for you to be up in here. I said, we're going to reverse that, and we're going to say it's a privilege to have you here, and change that, because out the gate, they're the first persons they see. They're the front line. So if you piss them off before they even get in the door to the cash register, then that makes my job harder as a comedian, or the other comedian's job harder, because it messes up the energy. And I wanted, I mean, that was in there, but I think that ended up getting cut. I've seen so many versions of this documentary. So it's important for these new comedians to know where we came from, and why you're able to do what you're doing, because people like myself and people like Eddie Murphy and Dick Gregory and pre-Pill Bill Cosby paved the way for me, as we paved the way for others.
Great, thank you.
And it was kind of long-winded, I'm sorry, but
no, you answered it perfectly, because if I had another question, you answered it already about the audience reaction. So thank you.